The grease-stained apron felt like a second skin now, heavier than it had any right to be. I stood at the industrial sink in the back of Sorrentino's, my hands submerged in water so hot it turned my knuckles pink, scrubbing at a pan encrusted with carbonara sauce that had hardened like cement. The kitchen hummed with its usual chaos, the hiss of searing meat, the clatter of plates, Marco's aggressive chopping on the wooden block behind me, and the constant drone of the ventilation system that never quite cleared the air of garlic and smoke. This was my refuge, my escape. 3 months ago, I'd been serving cocktails at that upscale lounge downtown, the kind of place where the lighting was always dim and the music just loud enough to make you lean in close to hear someone speak. That's where I'd met Derek, where he'd charmed me with his easy smile and expensive cologne, where I'd stupidly, naively fallen for every lie that dripped from his mouth like honey. The pan slipped from my grip, clanging against the metal sink. I flinched at the sound, my heart rate spiking the way it always did now at sudden noises. One of the line cooks glanced over, but I waved him off, forcing my breathing to steady. Derek couldn't find me here. I'd made sure of that. I'd quit without notice, blocked his number, moved to a different neighborhood. Sorrentino's was in a part of the city I'd never frequented before. Industrial, slightly rough around the edges, the kind of place where nobody asked questions and everyone minded their own business. "Stella, table 6 needs water," Maria's voice cut through my thoughts. She burst through the swinging doors, her dark hair escaping from its bun, face flushed from rushing between tables. "And chef wants to know if you finished with the pans." "Almost done," I called back, hauling the pan out and attacking it with renewed vigor. The steel wool scraped against my palm, but I welcomed the sting. Physical pain was simpler than the knot of anxiety that lived permanently in my chest now. I'd been invisible at the lounge, just another pretty face serving drinks to men who looked through me. Here at Sorrentino's, I was even more invisible, relegated to the kitchen, washing dishes, prepping vegetables, occasionally helping with simple sauces when they were short-staffed. The pay was worse, the hours longer, but it was honest work, safe work, or so I'd thought. It was nearly 10 when the energy in the kitchen shifted. I felt it before I understood it. A sudden tension that rippled through the staff like an electric current. Marco stopped mid-chop. The sous chef, Antonio, straightened his shoulders and adjusted his whites with trembling fingers. Even Chef Laurent, who usually barked orders with the authority of a general, lowered his voice to something approaching respectful. "He's here," someone whispered. I looked up from the mountain of dishes, suds dripping from my forearms. "Who?" Maria grabbed my elbow, her fingers digging in with surprising strength. "The owner, Mr. Russo. He never comes during service. Something must be wrong." The swinging doors opened, and the temperature in the kitchen seemed to drop 10 degrees. I should have kept my head down. I should have focused on the dishes, made myself even more invisible than usual. But curiosity, or perhaps some self-destructive instinct, made me turn. He filled the doorway in a way that had nothing to do with physical size, though he was tall, easily over 6 feet. It was the aura that surrounded him, an invisible force field that made everyone in the kitchen unconsciously take a step back. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, the kind that cost more than I made in 6 months. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, sharp jaw, straight nose, lips set in a line that suggested smiling was a foreign concept. But it was his eyes that caught me, held me frozen like a deer in headlights. Dark, almost black, and completely unreadable. 2 men flanked him, equally well-dressed, hands folded in front of them in a posture that screamed security despite the expensive clothes. One spoke into his wrist, eyes constantly scanning the kitchen. The other's hand rested casually near his jacket, and I didn't need much imagination to guess what he carried underneath. Chef Laurent. The owner's voice was surprisingly soft, almost gentle, but it carried an undercurrent of steel that made my spine straighten involuntarily. He spoke with a slight accent I couldn't quite place, Italian maybe, but smoothed by years in America. "The osso buco tonight. Exceptional." "Thank you, Mr. Russo." Chef Laurent practically bowed. I'd never seen him show deference to anyone. "We use your grandmother's recipe." Something flickered across Mr. Russo's face, there and gone so quickly I might have imagined it. I know. His gaze swept the kitchen, cataloging everything, everyone. For a moment, I thought his eyes paused on me, but surely that was paranoia. I was wearing a stained apron, my hair tied back in a messy knot, completely unremarkable. He moved through the kitchen with the confidence of a man who owned not just the building, but possibly the entire block. Chef Laurent followed, pointing out various stations, explaining the evening's menu with an enthusiasm I'd never heard from him before. The 2 security guards maintained their positions, one near the door, one always within arm's reach of their boss. I should have gone back to my dishes, should have made myself scarce. Instead, I found myself tracking his movement through the kitchen, watching the way the staff parted for him like water around a stone, the way his presence seemed to suck all the oxygen from the room. He stopped at the prep station where I'd left a cutting board full of julienned vegetables for tomorrow's service. Long fingers, surprisingly elegant for someone who exuded such danger, picked up a strip of carrot, examining it with the critical eye of someone who understood kitchens intimately. Consistent, good knife work. He set it down, and that's when he turned. Our eyes met. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The world narrowed to those dark eyes fixed on mine with an intensity that felt physical, like a hand pressing against my chest. In that frozen moment, I saw something flicker in his expression. Recognition? No. That was impossible. We'd never met. Interest? Curiosity? Whatever it was, it made my pulse race with a fear that was different from what I'd felt with Derek. This was primal, instinctive, the recognition of a predator by prey. The spell broke when I stepped backward, forgetting about the bucket of dirty water I'd left behind my station. My heel caught the rim, and I stumbled, arms windmilling as I tried to catch my balance. The bucket tipped, sending a wave of greasy, sudsy water across the kitchen floor. Shit! The word escaped before I could stop it. I hit the floor hard, my hip taking the brunt of the impact. Pain radiated up my side, but it was nothing compared to the mortification flooding through me, of all the times to be clumsy, in front of the owner, in front of... Don't move! The voice came from directly above me. Mr. Russo had crossed the distance between us in seconds, silent despite his expensive leather shoes. He stood at the edge of the spreading puddle, one hand raised to stop his guards from approaching. The floor is slippery. You'll hurt yourself. I looked up at him from my ungraceful sprawl, and something in his expression made my breath catch. Concern? No, that couldn't be right. Men like him didn't concern themselves with dishwashers who couldn't watch where they were stepping. He extended a hand toward me. I stared at it, at the gold watch glinting at his wrist, at the faint scars across his knuckles that spoke of a violent past, at the signet ring on his pinky finger with a symbol I didn't recognize. I'm fine, I managed, though my voice came out embarrassingly small. I can get up. I'm sure you can. He didn't lower his hand. But you'll ruin your clothes further, and the water has spread. Take my hand, Miss Stella. Just Stella. I hesitated another moment before placing my hand in his. The contact was electric. His palm was warm, calloused in unexpected places. His grip firm but careful as he pulled me to my feet with effortless strength. I stumbled slightly, still off balance, and his other hand came up to steady me, landing on my waist with a touch that burned through the thin fabric of my t-shirt. We stood too close. I could smell his cologne, something dark and woody with notes of leather and spice, expensive and intoxicating. Could see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw, the tiny scar above his left eyebrow, the way his pupils dilated slightly as he looked down at me. Are you injured? His thumb moved against my waist, just slightly, possibly unconsciously. The touch sent shivers racing up my spine. No, I'm fine. Really, I'm so sorry, Mr. Russo. I'll clean this up right away. Antonio will handle it. He still hadn't released me. One of his guards had already moved forward with a mop, but Mr. Russo's attention remained fixed on my face with an intensity that made me want to squirm. Have you worked here long, Stella? 3 months. Why was he asking? Why was he still touching me? And why wasn't I pulling away? 3 months. He repeated it like he was committing it to memory. And before that, the question felt loaded, dangerous. Different restaurant, downtown. Something flickered in his eyes. Interest? Calculation? I couldn't tell. His hand finally dropped from my waist, but he didn't step back, maintaining the intimate distance between us. What made you leave? Because my ex-boyfriend turned out to be a criminal who threatened me when I tried to end things. Because I was running. Because I was scared. Better hours. I lied. The words felt thin, transparent, and from the slight narrowing of his eyes, I suspected he knew it. I see. He reached into his jacket, both guards tensed immediately, and pulled out a business card. Black with silver lettering. He held it out to me. If you ever need anything, Stella. Anything at all. My personal number is on the back. I took the card with shaking fingers, unable to form words. Why would the owner of the restaurant give me his personal number? This didn't make sense. Nothing about this interaction made sense. Mr. Russo, one of his guards said quietly. We have the meeting at 11. He nodded without looking away from me. Be careful, Stella. This neighborhood isn't always safe, especially for young women working late shifts. His hand rose, and for a moment I thought he might touch my face. But he seemed to think better of it, lowering it again. Make sure someone walks you to your car. I take the bus, I said automatically, then immediately regretted it. Why was I telling him this? His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Not anymore. Marco. He turned to the line cook, who straightened like a soldier called to attention. From now on, Stella gets a ride home. Every shift. Understood? Yes, Mr. Russo. I really don't need... It wasn't a request. He cut me off, his tone leaving no room for argument, then softened slightly. Please, indulge me. Then he was gone, his guards flanking him as he strode out of the kitchen, leaving behind only the lingering scent of his cologne and the business card burning in my hand like evidence of something I didn't understand. The kitchen erupted into whispered conversations the moment the door swung closed behind him. I stood frozen in the middle of the cleaned-up puddle, staring at the card. The front read simply, D. Russo, proprietor. The back had a phone number, handwritten in strong, decisive strokes. Maria appeared at my elbow, eyes wide. Stella, do you know who that was? The owner, you said. Not just the owner. She lowered her voice until I had to strain to hear. Dominic Russo. They say he controls half the city. They say people who cross him disappear. They say... Maria! Chef Laurent's sharp voice cut through her whispers. Back to work. She scurried away, but not before shooting me a look that mixed fear with something like pity. I should have thrown the card away, should have requested a transfer to day shift, or better yet, quit entirely and found another restaurant, another neighborhood, put more distance between myself and whatever this was. Instead, I slipped the card into my pocket, where it rested against my hip like a brand. That night, Marco drove me home in his beat-up Honda, apologizing for the mess in the back seat, chattering nervously about nothing. I barely heard him. My mind was replaying every second of the encounter, every word, every look, every touch. When I finally made it to my tiny studio apartment, I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, my legs suddenly too weak to support me. I pulled out the business card, staring at the handwritten number in the dim light from my single lamp. The smart thing would be to forget this ever happened. To show up tomorrow, keep my head down, do my job, collect my paycheck, and stay invisible. But as I lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, all I could think about was the weight of his hand on my waist, the dark intensity of his eyes, and the way he'd said my name like he was tasting it, testing how it felt in his mouth. I didn't know it then, but my carefully constructed escape had just collapsed. I'd run from one danger straight into the arms of something far more deadly. The worst part? Some dark, reckless part of me wanted to run toward it instead of away. The nightmares started that night. I dreamed of Derek's hands around my throat. But when I looked up, it wasn't his face above me. It was Dominic Russo's, those dark eyes boring into mine with an intensity that felt like drowning. I woke gasping. Sheets tangled around my legs. The business card somehow clutched in my fist, though I'd left it on the nightstand. 3:17 a.m. The neon sign from the convenience store across the street cast red shadows across my ceiling. I lay there listening to the sounds of the city. Sirens in the distance. Someone shouting in the street below. The rhythmic drip of my leaky faucet. My hip throbbed where I'd hit the floor. A bruise already forming. A physical reminder that last night had been real. Work became a minefield. For the next week, I moved through the kitchen like a ghost, hyper-aware of every sound, every movement, waiting for him to appear again. He didn't. But his presence lingered like smoke. In the way Chef Laurent's standards somehow got even higher. In the expensive espresso machine that appeared in the break room, in the new security camera pointed at the back entrance where we took out the trash. "He's having the whole building upgraded," Maria whispered during our shared cigarette break. I didn't smoke, but I'd started joining her just to escape the suffocating tension inside. New locks, better lighting. Antonio heard him on the phone talking about unacceptable security risks. I thought about the way he'd looked at me, the warning about the neighborhood not being safe. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the October wind. Marco drove me home every night without fail, though he looked increasingly nervous about it, checking his mirrors obsessively, taking different routes. On the fourth night, I noticed the black SUV trailing us 3 cars back. On the fifth night, it was there again. "Marco," I said carefully, watching the vehicle in the side mirror. "Are we being followed?" His knuckles went white on the steering wheel. "Don't look at them directly. Who are they?" "Mr. Russo's people, making sure I actually take you home safe." He laughed, but it sounded strained. He calls Antonio every night to confirm. Every single night. Do you have any idea how insane that is? He owns 6 restaurants, 3 clubs, God knows what else, and he's personally tracking whether his dishwasher gets home safe. I sank lower in my seat, that mixture of fear and something else. Something warm and dangerous, blooming in my chest. "I didn't ask for this. Doesn't matter what you asked for." Marco's voice was gentle but firm. "Stella, I like you. You're a good kid. But you need to understand something. Men like Dominic Russo don't do anything without a reason. If he's interested in you, he's not interested in me. He probably doesn't even remember." He remembers. Marco pulled up to my building, the SUV idling at the corner. Trust me. He remembers. The weekend shift came with its own chaos. Sorrentinos did double the business on Friday and Saturday nights. Every table full, the kitchen operating at a frenetic pace that left no room for thought. I welcomed it. The mindless rhythm of washing, scrubbing, prepping. Antonio had started teaching me how to make the house marinara, a small kindness that felt monumental given how carefully he usually guarded his recipes. "You have good hands," he said, watching me dice tomatoes with the knife skills I'd been practicing obsessively. "Steady. My grandmother always said you can tell everything about a person by how they handle a knife. Respectful. Precise. You could move up, line cook. Maybe sous chef eventually." The praise warmed me more than it should have. "Really? Really? I'll talk to Chef Laurent. We're short-staffed anyway," and he stopped abruptly, his eyes fixed on something over my shoulder. The color drained from his face. "Mr. Russo." I spun around so fast I nearly dropped the knife. He stood in the kitchen doorway again, but this time he was different. No suit jacket, just a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, exposing forearms corded with muscle and scattered with more of those scars I'd noticed on his knuckles. His hair was slightly disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it. He looked tired, or as close to tired as someone like him probably ever appeared. And he was staring directly at me. "Mr. Russo." Chef Laurent appeared from the walk-in freezer, wiping his hands on his apron. "We weren't expecting... Is everything all right? The dining room is fine. I'm not here about the dining room." He moved into the kitchen with that same predatory grace, and I became acutely aware that I was holding a very sharp knife. I set it down carefully on the cutting board. "Stella, my office." Now, the kitchen went silent. Every eye turned to me. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it might crack bone. "I'm in the middle of prep," I heard myself say. The words came from somewhere outside my body, some autopilot defense mechanism, because surely I wasn't stupid enough to argue with him. His eyebrow raised a fraction of an inch. Around us, I could feel the collective intake of breath from the staff. No one said no to Dominic Russo. Antonio can finish the prep. His voice remained soft, controlled, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise? Amusement? This won't take long. I looked at Antonio, who nodded almost frantically, clearly terrified on my behalf. There was no way out of this. I untied my apron with shaking fingers, hyper-aware of every movement, every eye on me. One of Russo's guards materialized at the kitchen entrance. When had he arrived? And held the door open. The walk through the restaurant felt endless. Diners looked up as we passed, probably wondering why the owner was personally escorting a kitchen worker through the dining room. The guard followed 3 steps behind, silent as a shadow. We reached a door marked private near the back hallway, which Russo opened with a key from his pocket. His office was nothing like I'd expected. I'd imagined something cold, intimidating, all dark wood and leather, displays of wealth and power. Instead, it was surprisingly warm, exposed brick walls, framed photographs of Italian countryside, a massive desk that looked hand-carved, and built-in bookshelves filled with what appeared to be actual books, not just decorative spines. The scent of coffee and old paper hung in the air, mixing with that cologne I'd been unable to forget. Sit. He gestured to one of the chairs facing his desk. I'd rather stand. That eyebrow again, rising slightly. He moved to the window overlooking the alley, hands in his pockets, silhouetted against the city lights. For a long moment, he said nothing, and the silence stretched until I wanted to scream. You're afraid of me. It wasn't a question. Should I be? He turned, and the look on his face made my breath catch. There was something raw there, quickly masked but unmistakable. What has the staff been telling you? Enough. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold. Why am I here, Mr. Russo? Dominic. He moved closer, and I fought the urge to back away. When we're alone, you call me Dominic. We shouldn't be alone. Probably not. Another step. But here we are. The air felt too thick to breathe. He stopped just outside my personal space, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact, far enough that I couldn't accuse him of intimidation. Except everything about this was intimidation. The office, the privacy, the sheer force of his presence. I had you investigated. The words were so casual, so matter-of-fact, that it took a moment for them to register. Horror crashed through me. You what? Stella Marie Chen, 26, moved to the city 4 years ago from Portland. No family. Worked at Luminescence Lounge until 3 months ago, when you quit without notice and seemingly vanished. He recited the facts like he was reading from a file. You blocked your phone number, broke your lease, forwarded your mail to a P.O. box. Someone running. The question is from what, or whom? I couldn't speak, couldn't move. The room tilted dangerously. Derek Martinez. The name fell from his lips like a curse. Low-level dealer with delusions of grandeur. Works for the Santos crew, stealing from them to fuel a gambling problem. He didn't take kindly to you ending things, did he? How do you... My voice cracked. You have no right. I have every right. He moved closer, and now we were definitely in each other's space, his presence overwhelming. The moment you stepped into my restaurant, you became my responsibility. The moment He stopped, jaw clenching. Derek Martinez is a dead man. He just doesn't know it yet. The words should have terrified me. Instead, some twisted part of me felt relief, felt protected, felt safe. Which was insane. This man was dangerous. Everything about him screamed danger. I don't need you to fight my battles. Too late. His hand rose, and this time he did touch my face, fingers gentle against my jaw, thumb brushing my cheekbone. The touch sent electricity racing through me. He came to the restaurant 2 days ago, asking about you, asking the hostess if she'd seen a girl matching your description. My knees went weak. What did she tell him? Nothing. Because my people were there, because I made sure security knew to watch for anyone asking questions. His thumb traced a slow path to the corner of my mouth. He'll never get close to you again, I promise you that. Why? The word came out as barely a whisper. Why do you care? Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the controlled facade. Because from the moment I walked into that kitchen and saw you... He stopped, seeming to struggle with words for the first time. I can't explain it. I don't understand it myself. But you're mine to protect now, whether you accept that or not. I'm not yours. I should have pulled away from his touch. I didn't. Not yet. His voice dropped to something almost tender, which somehow made it more terrifying. But you will be. The certainty in those words made my heart race. I finally found the strength to step back, breaking contact. This is crazy. You don't even know me. I'm going to. He let me retreat, but didn't take his eyes off me. You're moving. Excuse me? Your apartment isn't safe. The building has no security, the locks are garbage, and the fire escape is accessible from the street. You'll move to one of my properties, a secure building, top floor. No arguments. I can't afford. It's not a rental. It's protection. He moved to his desk, pulled out a folder, and extended it toward me. The lease is already drawn up, rent-free, security included. You'll move this weekend. I stared at the folder like it might bite me. And if I refuse, then I'll assign a protection detail to your current address. 2 men. Round the clock. I imagine your neighbors will have questions. He set the folder on the desk between us. This is me giving you a choice, Stella. The illusion of one, at least. Because whether you're in my building or in that death trap you're currently living in, you're not going unprotected. Not anymore. The logical part of my brain screamed that this was wrong, that accepting anything from him would tie me to him in ways I couldn't foresee. But the exhausted, terrified part, the part that had been looking over my shoulder for 3 months, wanted desperately to say yes. I need to think about it. You have until Monday. He checked his watch, that same gold one I'd noticed before. Expensive and understated. Your shift is almost over. Marco will take you home. Tomorrow you're off, yes? I nodded mutely. Good. Rest. We'll talk Monday. He moved toward the door, then paused. Stella? One more thing. What? If Derek contacts you, if you see him anywhere, you call me immediately. Not the police. Me. Understood? The police can't protect you the way I can. His voice hardened to steel. The number on my card. Anytime, day or night. Promise me. I should have refused. Should have insisted on handling this legally. Properly. But I'd seen the look in Derek's eyes the last time we'd spoken, the barely restrained violence simmering beneath his charming surface. I'd heard the threat in his voice. You don't just walk away from me. I promise, I whispered. Satisfaction flashed across Dominic's face. He opened the door, where his guard waited patiently in the hallway. Take her to the kitchen. Make sure Marco is ready to drive her home. The guard nodded. I moved toward the door, then stopped, looking back at Dominic. He stood framed by the window again, city lights creating a halo effect around him. Dangerous. Beautiful. Completely terrifying. Why me? I asked. There are dozens of women who work for you. Why do you care about me? For a long moment, I didn't think he'd answer. Then, because when I looked at you, for the first time in 15 years, I felt something other than anger. His voice was raw, unguarded. Because you looked at me like I was a man, not a monster. Because... He stopped, shook his head. Go home, Stella. We'll talk Monday. I left before I could do something stupid like cry, or worse, walk back to him. Marco was waiting by his car, nervously smoking a cigarette. The black SUV was already in position down the street. The drive home was silent. I clutched the folder to my chest like a shield, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. When I finally made it inside my apartment, I locked the door, slid down to the floor, and opened the folder. The apartment was in a building I'd passed 100 times, one of those modern high-rises with doormen and security cameras and coded entry systems. The lease was indeed free, 12 months, with an option to extend. The unit was furnished, utilities included, parking spot in the underground garage. The address alone told me this was worth more monthly than I made in 6 months. There was a note paper-clipped to the lease, written in that same decisive handwriting. "You deserve to feel safe. Let me give you that." I read it 3 times, then pressed it against my chest, feeling something crack open inside me that I'd kept carefully locked away. This was insane. Accepting this would change everything. Would tie me to him in ways I couldn't begin to understand. But God help me. I wanted to say yes. Sunday. I spent the entire day pacing my tiny apartment, the folder open on my bed, the note clutched in my hand. I made lists of pros and cons. Called the one friend I had in the city, Sarah, who worked at a coffee shop and had no idea about my Derek situation. She'd squealed when I described the apartment, called me crazy for hesitating. "A billionaire wants to put you up in a luxury apartment? Girl, what's the problem? He's not a billionaire. He's dangerous, connected, possibly a criminal. It's complicated." "Is he hot?" I thought about those dark eyes, those scarred hands, the way he'd touched my face like I was something precious. "Yes." "Then it's not complicated. Say yes." If only it were that simple. Monday morning, I woke to my phone buzzing. Unknown number. My heart rate spiked. Derek? But when I answered, it was a woman's voice, professional and cool. "Miss Chen, this is Sophia Moretti, Mr. Russo's assistant. He'd like to see you today at 2 p.m. if you're available. I can send a car." I looked at the clock. 9:30 a.m. Yes, okay. "Wonderful. The car will be there at 1:45. Please bring the lease if you've made a decision." A pause. "He's hoping you've made the right one." She hung up before I could respond. The car arrived exactly on time. A sleek black sedan with tinted windows, driven by a man who introduced himself as Thomas and spoke with a slight Russian accent. He opened the door for me, waited until I was settled before closing it gently. We didn't go to the restaurant. Instead, we drove to the waterfront, to a building that made my breath catch. Glass and steel, modern architecture that gleamed in the afternoon sun. Thomas parked in an underground garage that required 2 separate security clearances, then escorted me to a private elevator that required a key card. "Penthouse," he said simply, inserting the card. My stomach dropped as the elevator rose. This wasn't just an apartment showing. This was something else entirely. The doors opened directly into the apartment. No hallway, no shared spaces. Just straight into a living room that was bigger than my entire current place, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. The afternoon light poured in, making the hardwood floors glow like honey. Dominic stood by the windows, hands in his pockets, wearing dark slacks and a black sweater that should have made him look casual, but somehow just emphasized the coiled danger in his frame. He turned when he heard the elevator, and something in his expression made my heart skip. "You came," he said, and there was relief in his voice. "You sent a very persuasive assistant." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Sophia is efficient." He gestured around the apartment. "What do you think?" I turned slowly, taking it in. The open kitchen with marble countertops and professional-grade appliances. The dining area with a table that could seat 8. The hallway that presumably led to bedrooms. Everything was decorated in warm neutrals, modern but not cold, expensive but not ostentatious. "It's beautiful," I admitted. "It's also too much." "Come, let me show you the rest." I followed him down the hallway, hyper-aware of how alone we were. Thomas had stayed in the elevator. There were no guards visible, though I suspected they were close. Dominic opened doors as we passed. A home office, a guest bedroom, a bathroom with a tub the size of my current kitchen. The master bedroom was at the end of the hall, and when he opened that door, I understood why he'd saved it for last. More floor-to-ceiling windows, a king-sized bed with white linens that looked impossibly soft, and a walk-in closet that was already partially filled with clothes. "I took the liberty," he said, watching my reaction. "Based on your size from your work uniforms. If anything doesn't fit or isn't to your taste, Sophia can arrange exchanges." I moved to the closet, running my hands over fabrics that felt like liquid silk, designer labels I recognized from magazine ads, dresses, slacks, sweaters, even pajamas. Shoes lined the bottom rack, heels, flats, boots, all in my size. This is insane. I turned to face him. Do you understand how insane this is? We barely know each other. I know you take your coffee black with 1 sugar. I know you hum while you work, always the same song, something classical. I haven't identified it yet. I know you're left-handed, but you've trained yourself to use your right for most tasks. I know you flinch at sudden movements and check the exits whenever you enter a room. I know someone hurt you, made you afraid, and I know... His voice dropped to something fierce. That I will burn the world down before I let anyone hurt you again. The intensity in his words, in his eyes, stole my breath. This wasn't normal. This wasn't how people behaved after knowing each other for a week. This was obsession. Possession. Something dark and consuming that should have sent me running. Why? I whispered. Tell me why. And don't give me that line about feeling something. I need the truth. He moved closer, and I let him, drawn by some magnetic pull I couldn't resist. When he reached for my hand, I didn't pull away. His thumb traced circles on my palm, the touch sending shivers up my arm. 3 years ago, he said quietly, I lost someone. Someone I should have protected. I was too late, too blind, too caught up in business to see what was happening right in front of me. And when I finally realized, he stopped, jaw clenching. I swore I'd never let that happen again. That if I ever felt that pull toward someone, that need to protect, to possess, to keep safe, I wouldn't hesitate. I wouldn't question it. I'd act. What happened to them? I asked, though part of me wasn't sure I wanted to know. My sister. The words were rough, painful. Her husband was stealing from the family. When she found out, when she threatened to tell me, he killed her. Made it look like an accident. By the time I learned the truth, she was already gone. Oh God. Dominic, I killed him. He said it flatly, matter of fact, slowly. And I've spent every day since wondering what I missed, what signs I ignored. So when I walked into that kitchen and saw you, saw that fear in your eyes, that exhaustion, that determination to be invisible, I recognized it, because I'd seen it before and ignored it. I won't make that mistake again. I should have been horrified. He'd just confessed to murder. Instead, I felt tears burning my eyes, felt something in my chest crack wide open. I'm not your sister, I said gently. You can't save her by saving me, I know. His free hand came up to cup my face, thumb catching a tear that spilled over. But maybe I can save you, and maybe that's enough. We stood there in the bedroom with its impossible luxury, the city sprawling beneath us through the windows. 2 broken people reaching for something neither of us fully understood. When he leaned down, giving me every opportunity to pull away, I didn't. The kiss was soft at first, questioning, his lips gentle against mine, but when I responded, when my hands fisted in his sweater and pulled him closer, something unleashed. He backed me against the wall, his body caging mine, the kiss deepening into something desperate and consuming. I tasted coffee and mint, felt the scrape of stubble against my skin, drowned in the scent of his cologne and something underneath that was purely him. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. Stay, he whispered. Move in. Let me keep you safe. Please. I knew what I should say, knew this was too fast, too intense, too dangerous. But Derek was out there looking for me. And here was someone offering protection, offering safety, offering something that felt terrifyingly like care. Okay, I breathed. Okay, I'll stay. The smile that broke across his face transformed him, made him look younger, almost vulnerable. You won't regret this. But as he kissed me again, as I lost myself in the heat of his touch and the promise of safety, I couldn't shake the feeling that I already did. The move happened with military precision. I'd barely agreed before Dominic had his phone out, making calls in rapid-fire Italian that I couldn't follow. Within 2 hours, a moving crew appeared at my old apartment. Professional, efficient, respectful. They packed my meager belongings with care that felt excessive for my second-hand furniture and threadbare clothes. Dominic had offered to replace everything, but I'd drawn a line there, needing to keep some piece of my independence intact. "These are yours," I'd insisted, gesturing at my battered bookshelf and the thrift store armchair I'd reupholstered myself. "I'm bringing them." He'd smiled at that. Something warm and genuine. "Whatever you want." By Tuesday evening, I was standing in the penthouse surrounded by boxes, my old life mixing with this new impossible one. Dominic had disappeared to handle business. A word I was learning covered a multitude of activities I probably shouldn't ask about, leaving me with Sophia, his assistant, who turned out to be a tiny woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an even sharper wit. "Mr. Russo has asked me to provide you with credit cards and access codes," she said, handing me a folder that was becoming a theme in my life. Building security, parking garage, the gym on the 10th floor. "There's also a car registered in your name in spot 4A. "A car?" I stared at her. "I don't need a car. Mr. Russo disagrees. He doesn't want you taking public transportation." She softened slightly. "Humor him. He's protective, so I'm noticing." She studied me for a moment, something calculating in her expression. "In the 15 years I've worked for him, I've never seen him bring a woman to any of his properties. Never seen him make calls personally about security details. Never seen him," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "care about someone the way he clearly cares about you. I don't know what your intentions are, Miss Chen, but I hope they're sincere. He's been through enough." The weight of that statement settled over me. "I'm not trying to take advantage. I didn't suggest you were, but you should know what you're getting into. Dominic Russo doesn't do anything halfway. If he's decided you're important to him, you're important. That comes with protection, yes, but it also comes with expectations, with danger, with a life that most people can't handle." She handed me one more card, black, heavy, with just a number embossed on it. "This is for emergencies. It reaches him directly, no matter what he's doing. Use it wisely." After she left, I stood in the massive living room, holding the emergency card, feeling the weight of what I'd agreed to settle over me like a cloak. The sun was setting over the harbor, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that seemed too beautiful for the complicated mess my life had become. My phone buzzed. "Dominic. Settling in? Need anything?" I smiled despite myself, just unpacking. "The view is incredible. Wait until you see it at night. I'll bring dinner." 8 p.m.? I should have said no. Should have established boundaries, kept some distance. Instead, okay. He arrived exactly at 8, armed with bags from an Italian restaurant I recognized as one of the most expensive in the city. No guards this time, though I suspected they were somewhere nearby. He'd changed into jeans and a fitted black t-shirt that showed off the kind of build that didn't come from a gym membership, but from actual physical work. "I didn't know what you liked," he said, unpacking container after container. "So I got everything. There was enough food for 6 people. Homemade pasta, braciole, risotto, 3 different salads, fresh bread still warm from the oven." We ate at the dining table, the one that could seat 8, just the 2 of us at one end. The conversation flowed easier than I'd expected. He asked about my life before the city, about my parents who'd died in a car accident when I was 20, about my abandoned dreams of culinary school. "You could still go," he said, refilling my wine glass. "If that's what you want. On a dishwasher's salary? Not likely. You're not just a dishwasher anymore. Antonio tells me you have talent. Real talent." He leaned back, studying me. "And money isn't an issue. I could..." "No." I cut him off gently but firmly. "I appreciate everything you've done, truly. But I need to earn things myself. I need to feel like I'm not just kept." Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe. "I understand. But the offer stands. When you're ready." He paused. "Tell me about Derek. How did you meet him?" The question sent ice through my veins. "I'd rather not. I need to know what I'm dealing with, please." I set down my fork. Appetite gone. He came into the lounge where I worked. Charming, funny, generous with tips. Asked me out for weeks before I finally said yes. The memories tasted bitter. For 2 months, it was perfect. He was attentive, romantic. Then I started noticing things, the way he'd disappear for days without explanation, the phone calls he'd take in another room, the men who'd show up at his apartment at odd hours. Dominic's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent, letting me continue. When I asked him about it, he laughed it off, said I was paranoid. But then I saw money, Dominic. Stacks of it, just sitting in his closet, and drugs, cocaine, pills, things I couldn't identify. When I tried to end it, I stopped, the memory making my throat close up. He what? His voice was deadly quiet. He grabbed me, shoved me against the wall, told me I didn't get to leave, that I belonged to him now, that if I tried to run, he'd find me. I touched my throat unconsciously, remembering the pressure of his fingers. He said he had connections, that no matter where I went in this city, he'd know. That's when I realized I had to disappear completely. Dominic stood so abruptly his chair scraped against the floor. He moved to the windows, hands clenched into fists, the muscles in his shoulders rigid with barely controlled rage. For a long moment, he didn't speak, and when he did, his voice was rough. He put his hands on you. Yes. He threatened you. Yes. He turned, and the look on his face made my breath catch. This wasn't the controlled businessman or the charming dinner companion. This was something primal, dangerous, the man beneath the carefully maintained facade. Stella, I need you to understand something. Derek Martinez is a dead man. He just doesn't know it yet. But before he dies, he's going to suffer. He's going to know exactly what it feels like to be powerless, to be afraid, and he's going to know it's because he touched what's mine. I should have been horrified by the casual way he talked about murder. Instead, some dark part of me felt savage satisfaction. You can't just kill people because they hurt me. Watch me. He moved back to the table, kneeling beside my chair so we were eye level. His hands framed my face, gentle despite the violence simmering in his eyes. You're under my protection now. That means anyone who's hurt you, anyone who's threatened you, answers to me. This isn't negotiable. Dominic, say you understand. His thumbs traced my cheekbones. Say you understand that you're safe now, that you never have to be afraid of him again. The intensity of his gaze held me captive. I understand. Good. He pressed a kiss to my forehead, lingering there. I have to go. Business. But I'm posting a guard in the building. His name is Luca, former Special Forces. If you need anything at all, he's outside apartment 2901, 2 floors down. That's not necessary. It is to me. He stood, helping me to my feet. Get some rest. Tomorrow you're back at work. Antonio's promoting you to prep cook. Better hours, better pay. My eyes widened. He is? I suggested it. He agreed you're ready. A hint of that smile. Any objections? I had dozens, but looking at him, at the care and concern in his eyes, the protective fury still simmering beneath the surface, I found myself shaking my head. No objections. Smart girl. He kissed me again, this time on the lips, slow and thorough, before pulling away. Lock the door behind me. I'll call you tomorrow. After he left, I did lock the door, then leaned against it, trying to process everything. My new apartment, my new job. This man who'd entered my life like a hurricane and seemed determined to rebuild it, according to his specifications. It should have felt suffocating. Instead, for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Work the next day was different in every way. Antonio greeted me with a rare smile and a new uniform, chef's whites instead of the stained apron and t-shirt I'd worn before. He stationed me at a prep area with a mountain of vegetables and detailed instructions for the evening's specials. You mess up, you tell me immediately, he said. No hiding mistakes. Understood? Yes, chef. And Stella? He lowered his voice. Whatever's happening between you and Mr. Russo, be careful. He's a good man. Better than people think. But his world is dangerous. Don't get pulled in deeper than you can handle. Too late, I thought, but didn't say. The rhythm of prep work was meditative. Julienning carrots with precision, mincing garlic until my fingers smelled like it, reducing stock until it reached the perfect consistency. Maria stopped by during her break, eyes wide. You moved up, she said, impressed. In 3 months. That never happens. I got lucky. Look. She laughed. Is that what we're calling it? She leaned closer. Word is you're seeing Mr. Russo. Is it true? I kept my eyes on the cutting board. It's complicated. Everything about him is complicated. But Stella, she hesitated. Be careful. Men like him don't have normal relationships. They have possessions. Make sure you know which one you are. Her words echoed in my head for the rest of the shift. Was I a possession to Dominic? The apartment, the clothes, the job, they certainly felt like the trappings of ownership. But then I remembered the way he'd looked at me, the rawness in his voice when he talked about his sister, the gentle way he touched me like I might break. I was wiping down my station when Chef Laurent approached, an odd expression on his face. Stella, someone's here to see you. Says he's an old friend. Ice flooded my veins. What does he look like? Tall, brown hair, expensive watch. He's waiting in the alley. Said to tell you it's important. Derek. My hand started shaking so badly I dropped the cloth. Chef Laurent's eyes narrowed. You know who it is. I need to call someone. I fumbled for my phone, but my fingers wouldn't cooperate. The black card. Where was the black card? In my locker. Chef, I need... Go to my office. Lock the door. I'll handle this. His voice was firm, protective. Go, now. I ran to his office, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might be sick. Found the black card in my bag, hands shaking as I dialed. It rang once. Stella. Dominic's voice was sharp, immediately alert. What's wrong? He's here. Derek's here, at the restaurant. Chef Laurent sent me to the office, but lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me or Luca. I'm 10 minutes away. I heard him moving, heard him barking orders to someone. Stay on the line with me. Tell me exactly what happened. I recounted it, my voice breaking, while he murmured reassurances, his own voice tight with barely controlled rage. In the background, I could hear a car engine, the sounds of the city rushing past. He won't touch you, Dominic said. I promise you, Stella. He won't get within 10 feet of you. 7 minutes later, I heard shouting in the alley, then silence, then footsteps. A knock on the door. Stella, it's me. Open the door. Dominic's voice. I unlocked it with trembling fingers, and he was there, suit jacket gone, sleeves rolled up, a wild look in his eyes that gentled the moment he saw me. He pulled me into his arms, and I collapsed against him, shaking. You're safe. I have you. You're safe. Derek is being handled. His hand stroked my hair. He'll never bother you again, I promise. What does that mean? I pulled back to look at him. Dominic, what are you going to do? His expression was cold, merciless. What needs to be done? Before I could respond, Luca appeared in the doorway, a tall man with a scarred face and eyes that had seen too much. Boss. He's secured. Good. Take him to the warehouse. I'll deal with him personally. Dominic looked down at me. You're done for the night. Luca will take you home. I'll come by later. I want to know what happens to him. No, you don't. His voice was gentle but final. Trust me, Tesoro. You don't want to know. He kissed my forehead and was gone, leaving me with Luca, who escorted me to the car with professional efficiency. The drive home was silent. When we reached the building, he walked me to my door, checked the apartment, then stationed himself in the hallway. I'll be here all night, Miss Chen. You're safe. I locked myself inside and sank onto the couch, adrenaline finally crashing. My phone buzzed. Dominic. Home safe? Yes. Where are you? Handling things. Don't wait up. I'll see you tomorrow. I wanted to text back, wanted to demand answers. Instead, I just sent, be careful. His response came immediately, always. Sleep well, Tesoro. I didn't sleep well. I lay in the massive bed, staring at the ceiling, imagining what handling things meant. Imagining Derek's face when he realized who he'd crossed. Part of me felt sick. Part of me felt vindicated. All of me felt irrevocably changed. When I finally drifted off near dawn, I dreamed of dark eyes and scarred hands, of protection that felt like possession, of safety that tasted like danger. And in the dream, I wasn't running anymore. I was exactly where I wanted to be. I woke to sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of coffee. For a disoriented moment, I didn't remember where I was. Then it all came rushing back. The penthouse. Derek showing up. Dominic's cold promise to handle things. I sat up, heart racing, and heard sounds from the kitchen. Male voices, low and conversational. I grabbed a robe from the closet, silk, expensive, probably cost more than my monthly salary, and crept down the hallway. Dominic stood at the kitchen island with Luca, both of them drinking espresso from tiny cups. Dominic looked exhausted, his dress shirt wrinkled, sleeves still rolled up, a shadow of stubble darkening his jaw. When he saw me, something in his expression softened. "You're awake." He set down his cup. "I didn't want to disturb you. What time is it?" My voice came out rough from sleep. "Just past 9. You don't work until 4 today?" He nodded to Luca, who immediately melted away, leaving us alone. "Come here." I moved to him, and he pulled me against his chest, arms wrapping around me with a possessiveness that should have alarmed me, but instead made me feel safe. He smelled like smoke, an expensive cologne, and when I pulled back to look at him, I saw bruises forming on his knuckles. "Derek," I whispered. "Won't be bothering you anymore." His voice was flat, emotionless. "Or anyone else." I touched his damaged hand gently. "Is he alive? For now. Depending on what the Santos crew decides to do when they find out he's been skimming their money." Dominic caught my hand, pressing a kiss to my palm. He confessed everything. The threats, the violence. Even showed me pictures he'd taken of you without your knowledge, following you to work, to your apartment, planning when to make his move. Nausea rolled through me. Pictures? Destroyed. Along with his phone, his computer, every trace of you he'd collected. His jaw clenched. I made sure he understood what happens to men who hurt what's mine. He won't forget that lesson. You didn't kill him. It was half statement, half question. No, though I wanted to. His thumb traced circles on my wrist, but I realized dying would be too easy. Living with fear, with the knowledge that I'm watching him, that one wrong move means I finish what I started. That's a better punishment. He'll spend every day looking over his shoulder, the way you had to. Seems fair, doesn't it? It was twisted logic, vigilante justice that bypassed every legal system. I should have been horrified. Instead, I felt a dark satisfaction settle in my chest. "Yes," I admitted, "it does." He pulled me closer, his forehead resting against mine. "I need you to understand something, Stella. This is who I am, what I do. The restaurant is legitimate, yes, but the rest." He paused, choosing words carefully. "I operate in gray areas. I protect my interests, my people, with whatever means necessary. I can't promise you a normal life, can't promise you safety from everything. But I can promise you'll never have to face threats alone again. I know what you are." My hands fisted in his shirt. "I've known since that first night. Everyone knows. They're just too afraid to say it, and yet you're still here. I'm still here." He kissed me then, deep and desperate, tasting like coffee and something darker. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "I have meetings today, business I can't avoid, but tonight," his voice dropped, intimate, "I want to take you somewhere special, just us." "A date?" "Something like that." A ghost of a smile. "Wear one of the dresses from the closet, the blue one. I'll pick you up at 7. He left shortly after, though Luca remained stationed somewhere nearby. I spent the day in a haze, trying to process everything. My shift at the restaurant felt surreal. Antonio teaching me how to make the house marinara from scratch. The careful layering of flavors, the patience required to let it simmer properly. My hands moved through the familiar motions while my mind replayed the past 24 hours on an endless loop. Maria cornered me during a break, eyes bright with curiosity and concern. "Everyone's talking about what happened last night. Your ex showing up, Mr. Russo leaving with him. Are you okay?" "I'm fine. It's handled." "Handled how?" She lowered her voice. "Stella, people who cross Dominic Russo don't usually—" "He's alive," I cut her off. "And he won't be bothering me again. That's all you need to know." She studied me for a long moment. You're different. Harder somehow. Maybe I'm just done being afraid. At 6:30, I stood in front of the closet, staring at the blue dress Dominic had mentioned. It was beautiful. Midnight blue silk that looked like it would hug every curve, with a neckline that was elegant rather than provocative. I slipped it on, and it fit perfectly, like it had been made for me. The shoes he'd paired with it were simple heels, comfortable enough to walk in, but high enough to make my legs look endless. I was applying lipstick when my phone buzzed. Downstairs. Take your time. I grabbed a clutch, also provided, also perfect, and took the elevator down. The doors opened to the lobby, and I saw him immediately. He stood by the entrance in a dark suit that probably cost more than my car, talking quietly on his phone. When he saw me, he ended the call mid-sentence. The look on his face made me feel powerful and vulnerable all at once. Tesoro. The endearment rolled off his tongue like a prayer. You're breathtaking. Heat crept up my neck. The dress is beautiful. It's not the dress. He offered his arm. Come. Our reservation is at 8. The car waiting outside wasn't the sedan. It was a vintage Alfa Romeo, sleek and beautiful, probably worth more than everything I'd ever owned combined. He opened my door, waited until I was settled before closing it gently. Luca and another guard followed in a black SUV, maintaining a discreet distance but always there. Where are we going? I asked, as he navigated through evening traffic with the ease of someone who knew the city intimately. Somewhere we can talk without interruption. Without guards listening, without the weight of everything else. He glanced at me. I want one evening where you see me as just a man, not everything else that comes with my name. Is that possible? We can pretend. A hint of sadness in his voice. Just for tonight. The restaurant he took me to wasn't in the city. We drove for nearly an hour, past the suburbs, into countryside I didn't know existed this close to urban sprawl. The place was small, intimate. A converted farmhouse with maybe 8 tables, all separated by enough space to ensure privacy. The owner greeted Dominic like family, kissing both cheeks, calling him Nico with affection. My cousin's place, Dominic explained, as we were led to a private room with a fireplace and a single table set for 2. She learned to cook from our grandmother. No one makes pasta like Rosa. The meal was incredible. Course after course of simple, perfect Italian food, fresh burrata with heirloom tomatoes and basil, handmade ravioli and brown butter sage sauce, branzino so delicate it melted on the tongue. Between courses we talked, really talked, in a way we hadn't before. He told me about growing up in Sicily, about his grandmother who'd raised him after his parents died in a Mafia hit when he was 7, about coming to America at 16 with nothing, working his way up through restaurants until he could buy his first one, about his sister, Angela, who'd been his whole world until her husband's betrayal. She was everything good about our family, he said quietly, staring into his wine glass, kind, generous, always seeing the best in people. I was too busy building the empire, protecting our interests, expanding. I didn't see that the real danger was already inside our circle. By the time I realized, he stopped, jaw working. I found her body. The police called it an accident, a fall down the stairs. But I knew. I always knew. I reached across the table, taking his hand. I'm sorry. After that, I changed. Became harder, more suspicious, built walls around myself that no one could penetrate. Trusted no one completely. His eyes met mine. Until you. Me? We barely know each other. I know enough. His thumb traced patterns on my palm. I know you're stronger than you think. I know you've been hurt but haven't let it make you cruel. I know when you smile, really smile, not the fake one you give customers. Your whole face lights up. I know you hum Vivaldi's Winter when you're concentrating. I know you take your coffee black because you can't afford the fancy drinks, but you tell people it's preference. I know, his voice dropped, intimate, that you make me want to be the man you see when you look at me, instead of the monster everyone else sees. Tears burned my eyes. I don't see a monster. You should. He stood, moving to my side of the table, kneeling beside my chair. I've killed people, Stella. Not in war, not in self-defense. I've ordered deaths, carried them out myself when necessary. I've built my empire on fear and blood and violence. You should be terrified of me, but I'm not. I cupped his face, feeling the scratch of stubble against my palms. You know why? Because every terrible thing you've done for a reason, to protect your family, to maintain order, to keep people like Derek from hurting innocent people. You're not cruel for cruelty's sake. You're not a monster. You're just a man trying to survive in a world that doesn't forgive weakness. He closed his eyes, leaning into my touch like a man starved for gentleness. You make me want to be better, then be better. For yourself. Not for me. When he opened his eyes, the emotion there stole my breath. What if I can't separate the two anymore? I didn't have an answer for that. Instead, I leaned down and kissed him, pouring everything I couldn't say into the contact. His hands came up to tangle in my hair, careful not to ruin the style, the kiss deepening into something that made my toes curl. We stayed at the farmhouse until nearly midnight, talking and kissing by the fireplace like teenagers. The guards forgotten, the city forgotten, everything forgotten, except this moment. When we finally left, he drove slower on the way back, like he was reluctant for the evening to end. Come upstairs, I said when we pulled into the building's garage. Stay. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. Stella, I'm not asking for promises. I'm not asking for forever. I'm asking for tonight. I met his eyes in the dim light. Stay with me tonight. For a moment, I thought he'd refuse. Thought he'd give me some noble speech about taking things slow, about not taking advantage. Instead, he killed the engine and nodded. The elevator ride up was charged with tension. We didn't touch, didn't speak, but the air between us crackled with anticipation. The moment my apartment door closed behind us, he pulled me against him, backing me toward the bedroom with kisses that grew more desperate with each step. Are you sure? He asked, even as his hands found the zipper of my dress. Because once I have you, Stella, I won't want to let you go, ever. I'm sure. I pulled at his jacket, his tie, needing to feel skin. I've never been more sure of anything. What happened next was tender and fierce, gentle and consuming. He worshipped every inch of my skin like I was something precious, something sacred. Whispered Italian words I didn't understand but felt in my bones, made me feel cherished and desired and safe in ways I'd never experienced. When we finally came together, it felt less like sex and more like claiming, like sealing a promise we'd both been dancing around since that first night in the kitchen. Afterward, we lay tangled together, my head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my spine. The city lights painted shadows across the ceiling, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt completely at peace. I love you. The words slipped out before I could stop them, raw and honest and terrifying. His hand stilled on my back. For a moment, the silence stretched so long I wanted to take it back, to laugh it off as post-orgasmic nonsense. Then, I've loved you since the moment you fell in that kitchen and looked at me like I was just a man offering help, not a god to be feared or a monster to avoid. His voice was rough with emotion. I've loved you through every fight you put up against my protection, every stubborn refusal to let me buy you things, every moment you chose to see the best in me despite knowing the worst. I love your strength and your vulnerability, your kindness and your fire. I love... He tilted my face up to his. Everything about you, Stella Chen. And I will spend the rest of my life keeping you safe, keeping you happy, keeping you mine. I kissed him, tasting salt. Mine or his, I couldn't tell. No more running. No more running, he agreed. You're home now, with me, where you belong. We made love again, slower this time, savoring every touch, every kiss, every whispered word. And when I finally fell asleep in his arms, I didn't dream of fear or shadows or danger. I dreamed of dark eyes that saw me, scarred hands that held me gently, and a future that looked nothing like I'd planned, but everything like I'd secretly hoped for. The monster had become my sanctuary. The danger had become my safety, and I'd never been happier. The next 3 months passed in a blur of contradictions that somehow made perfect sense. By day, I worked at Sorrentino's, my skills growing under Antonio's patient tutelage until Chef Laurent started letting me work the line during service. The adrenaline rush of cooking during the dinner rush, the precision required, the artistry. It awakened something in me I hadn't known was sleeping. Dominic watched from the kitchen doorway sometimes, arms crossed, a small smile playing at his lips as he observed me plate dishes with growing confidence. By night, I lived in a world of silk sheets and security details, of dinners at exclusive restaurants and quiet evenings on the penthouse balcony watching the city lights. Dominic was generous but never condescending, protective but respectful of the boundaries I set. He taught me Italian over morning espresso, laughed at my terrible pronunciation, kissed away my frustration when I couldn't roll my R's properly. "You're trying too hard, Tesoro." He'd murmur against my lips, let it flow naturally, but the darkness was always there, lurking at the edges of our bubble. The late-night phone calls he took in his office with the door closed, the meetings with men who had hard eyes and expensive suits, the nights he came home with bruised knuckles and blood on his shirt that wasn't his own. I learned not to ask questions, learned to tend his wounds in silence, to hold him when the nightmares came, to be his peace in a world of violence. It was late January when everything shifted again. I was prepping for the evening service, lost in the rhythm of Brunoise cutting onions when Sophia appeared in the kitchen. Her presence there was unusual enough that everyone noticed. Chef Laurent straightened immediately. "Miss Chen," she said, her professional mask firmly in place. "Mr. Russo needs to see you immediately." The tone sent ice through my veins. "Is everything okay?" "His office. Now please." I untied my apron with shaking hands, mind racing through possibilities. Had something happened? Was he hurt? The walk through the restaurant felt endless. Every eye on me, whispers starting before I'd even left the kitchen. Dominic's office door was closed. Sophia knocked once, then opened it, gesturing me inside before closing it behind me. He stood at the window, back to me, shoulders rigid with tension. Two men I didn't recognize sat in the chairs facing his desk, older, distinguished, dangerous in that particular way that marked them as Dominic's world. "Stella." He didn't turn. "Come here." I moved to his side, and he immediately pulled me against him, arm around my waist, possessive and protective. "Gentlemen, this is Stella Chen." "Stella, this is Marco Castellano and his associate, Vincent. They're from New York." The older man, Marco, studied me with dark eyes that missed nothing. "So this is the woman who's managed to domesticate the beast of Brooklyn." I felt Dominic tense beside me. "Get to the point, Marco." "The point," Marco said, leaning back in his chair, "is that your protection of Miss Chen has created complications. Derek Martinez was a nobody. But the Santos crew is connected to the Moretti family. And the Morettis want answers about why one of their dealers turned up beaten half to death with all his fingers broken, and a very clear message about staying away from a certain young woman." My stomach dropped. Dominic's arm tightened around me. "That's my business, not theirs." "It became their business when you crossed territorial lines." Marco's voice was calm, reasonable, which somehow made it more terrifying. "The families have agreements, Dominic. You know this. You can't go around breaking their people without consequences." He threatened what's mine. I responded appropriately. "By whose authority?" Marco stood, buttoning his jacket. "You're not untouchable, my friend. The families have been patient with your independent operation, but patience has limits. They want tribute. For the disrespect. For the territorial violation. Name the price. Not money." Marco's eyes flicked to me. "They want assurance. They want to know this woman is truly under your protection, that this isn't some passing obsession that will create more problems down the line. She's mine," Dominic said flatly. "That should be assurance enough. Then make it official." Marco moved toward the door, Vincent following silently. "Marry her. Make her untouchable under family law. Or give her up and apologize to the Morettis for the misunderstanding. You have 2 weeks to decide." They left. The silence in the office was deafening. I pulled away from Dominic, my mind reeling. Did he just say, "Marry you or give you up"? Yes, Dominic's voice was tight with barely controlled fury. He moved to his desk, poured himself a drink from the crystal decanter, downed it in one swallow. "Fucking vultures. You don't have to." I mean, we can figure something else. There is nothing else. He set the glass down with more force than necessary. If I don't marry you, they'll see you as a liability, a weakness they can exploit. And if I give you up, his jaw clenched. That's not an option. So we're trapped. He crossed to me in 2 strides, hands framing my face with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the rage in his eyes. I'm trapped by politics and ancient agreements. You're not trapped at all. If you want to walk away, I'll arrange it. New identity, new city. Enough money to start over anywhere you want. The families will leave you alone if I let you go properly. My heart clenched. Is that what you want? What I want, he said roughly, is to keep you safe, to keep you mine, to wake up every morning with you in my arms, and fall asleep every night knowing you're protected. What I want is to make you my wife, not because some family demands it, but because I can't imagine my life without you in it. His thumbs traced my cheekbones. But I won't trap you. Won't force you into this world deeper than you already are. So the choice is yours, Tesoro. Always yours. I thought about the past 3 months. The fear I'd felt giving way to trust. The way he'd never tried to change me. Only protect me. The gentleness beneath the violence. The honor beneath the darkness. I thought about morning espresso and Italian lessons. About the way he held me after nightmares. About how he looked at me like I was the only thing in the world worth protecting. Ask me, I whispered. His eyes searched mine. Stella, ask me properly. Understanding dawned in his expression, followed by something raw and vulnerable. He sank to one knee, still holding my face, looking up at me with such open emotion it stole my breath. Stella Marie Chen, you walked into my life covered in grease and fear, and you changed everything. You made me remember what it feels like to hope, to care about something more than power and revenge. You see the man I want to be instead of the monster I've become. You're my light in the darkness, my peace in the chaos, my reason for everything. His voice cracked slightly. Will you marry me? Not because the families demand it, not because of politics or protection, but because I love you more than I thought I was capable of loving anyone, because I want to spend the rest of my life earning the trust you've given me. Because you're already my wife in every way that matters, and I want to make it official. Tears streamed down my face. You're sure? This is what you want? I've never been more sure of anything. Then yes. I pulled him to his feet, kissing him through my tears. Yes, I'll marry you. I love you. God help me. I love you. He kissed me like I was oxygen and he'd been drowning, deep and desperate and full of promise. When we finally broke apart, he pulled a box from his pocket, black velvet, worn at the edges. This was my grandmother's, he said, opening it to reveal a ring that made me gasp. An emerald surrounded by diamonds, vintage and beautiful. She gave it to me before she died. Told me to give it to a woman who could handle the weight of what our family is. A woman with strength and fire and a good heart. He slipped it onto my finger, a perfect fit. She would have loved you. I stared at the ring, at this man kneeling before me, at the life I was choosing with full knowledge of what it meant. When? As soon as possible. A week, if you're willing. Small ceremony, just close family and associates. Unless you want something bigger. Small is perfect. I didn't have family to invite anyway. But Dominic, I need to know, is this really what you want? Or are you doing this because they're forcing your hand? He stood, pulling me flush against him. If they'd never made their demands, I would have asked you anyway. Maybe not this soon. Maybe I would have courted you properly for a year first. But the end result would have been the same. You, wearing my ring. You, taking my name. You, mine in every way possible. His hand slid into my hair, tilting my head back. The families just accelerated my timeline. What if I can't handle it? What if... Then we figure it out together. He kissed my forehead, my cheeks, my lips. I'm not asking you to become someone else, Stella. I'm asking you to be exactly who you are, at my side, for the rest of our lives. The wedding happened 6 days later. Sophia had worked miracles, arranging everything with military efficiency. The ceremony took place in a small church in Little Italy. the same one where Dominic's grandmother had been baptized 80 years ago. I wore a simple white dress from a designer boutique, elegant and understated, with my hair swept up and Dominic's grandmother's pearl earrings complementing the ring. Maria and Antonio stood as witnesses, both looking terrified and proud in equal measure. The church was filled with men in expensive suits, and their elegant wives, all watching with careful, assessing eyes as I walked down the aisle to where Dominic waited. He looked devastating in a black tuxedo, his hair perfectly styled, but it was his eyes that held me, full of such open love and possessive pride that I forgot to be nervous. When I reached him, he took my hand, bringing it to his lips. "Bellissima," he murmured. "My beautiful wife." The ceremony was traditional Catholic, performed by a priest who'd known Dominic's family for decades. When we exchanged vows, his voice was steady and sure, but I felt his hand tremble slightly in mine. "I, Dominic Alessandro Russo, take you, Stella Marie Chen, to be my wife. I promise to protect you, cherish you, and love you for all the days of my life. I promise to be the man you deserve, to honor the trust you've placed in me, to give you everything I have and everything I am. From this moment, until my last breath, you are mine, and I am yours." My own vows were simpler, but no less heartfelt. I, Stella Marie Chen, take you, Dominic Alessandro Russo, to be my husband. I promise to stand beside you, to be your peace in the storm, to love you despite and because of who you are. I choose you, knowing everything, accepting everything. From this moment until my last breath. When the priest pronounced us married, Dominic kissed me with a passion that made several people clear their throats uncomfortably. I didn't care. In that moment, in that church, surrounded by dangerous men and their knowing smiles, I felt safer than I'd ever felt in my life. The reception was held at Sorrentino's, which had been transformed into something magical. Flowers everywhere, candles on every surface, the whole restaurant reserved for the celebration. Chef Laurent had outdone himself with the food, course after course of exquisite Italian dishes that had guests murmuring appreciation. Marco Castellano approached us during dinner, raising his glass. "To the happy couple, may your union bring peace and prosperity to all the families." It was a political statement, as much as a blessing, but Dominic accepted it with grace, his arm never leaving my waist. I was introduced to dozens of people whose names I'd never remember, all of them treating me with a deference that felt surreal. I was no longer just Stella. I was Signora Russo, the wife of one of the most powerful men in the city. Later, during our first dance, Dominic held me close, swaying to Italian music I didn't recognize. "Happy," he murmured against my ear. Terrified, I admitted, but yes, happy. "Good." He pulled back to look at me, something fierce in his expression, because I meant every word I said today. "You're mine now, legally, publicly, irrevocably mine. And I'm yours. No more running, no more hiding. Just us, building a life together. What about the restaurant? My job? What about it?" He smiled. "You think marrying me means you have to give up cooking? Tesoro, I fell in love with you in a kitchen. I want you to have everything you want. Culinary school, your own restaurant eventually if that's your dream. Whatever makes you happy. And if what makes me happy is just working at Sorrentino's with Antonio, then that's what you'll do." He kissed my temple. "I'm not trying to own you, Stella. I'm trying to build a life with you. There's a difference." We danced until my feet hurt, ate until we were stuffed, accepted congratulations from people who probably terrified law enforcement. And through it all, Dominic never left my side, his hand always on me, my waist, my hand, my shoulder, like he needed the physical contact to believe this was real. The penthouse had been transformed when we finally made it home near midnight. Rose petals on the bed, candles everywhere, champagne chilling in a bucket. Dominic carried me over the threshold despite my laughing protests, kicking the door closed behind us. "Alone at last," he murmured, setting me down gently. "My wife." "Say it again." "My wife." He started on the buttons of my dress, his eyes dark with intent. "Mrs. Russo. Signora Russo. Mine." What followed was tender and fierce, a claiming and a surrender, a promise sealed in the most intimate way possible. He worshipped every inch of my skin, whispered Italian endearments I was starting to understand, made me feel cherished and desired and utterly possessed. Afterward, we lay tangled together, the city lights painting patterns across our skin. I traced the scars on his chest, each one a story I'd learned over the months. "No regrets?" he asked quietly. "None." I pressed a kiss over his heart. "You?" "My only regret is not finding you sooner." His arms tightened around me. "But we have now. We have forever." "Forever," I agreed, and felt the truth of it settle into my bones. The weeks that followed established our new normal. I kept working at the restaurant, though now Antonio treated me with a deference that felt odd. Chef Laurent started talking about making me sous chef when the current one retired. Dominic installed better security throughout the building, hired additional staff, expanded the menu to include some of my own creations. At home, we fell into comfortable rhythms. Morning espresso on the balcony, him teaching me about the business, the legitimate parts, carefully sidestepping the darker aspects unless I asked directly. Me teaching him to appreciate the simple pleasure of cooking together, of creating something with our hands. The families left us alone, the marriage satisfying whatever political requirements they'd demanded. Derek disappeared, literally. Maria whispered that he'd been found in a Santos safe house, barely alive, with enough evidence of his skimming to ensure the Morettis handled him themselves. I didn't ask for details, didn't want to know. That part of my life was over. 3 months after the wedding, I missed my period. The pregnancy test sat on the bathroom counter, 2 pink lines screaming their truth. I stared at it, hands shaking, mind racing. We'd been careful, mostly. But there'd been nights when passion overtook caution, when the need for connection overwhelmed practicality. I heard the front door open, Dominic's voice calling out, "Tesoro, I'm home early." Thought we could... He appeared in the bathroom doorway, saw me standing there with the test in my hand, and went utterly still. "Stella?" I held it up, unable to form words. His eyes dropped to the test, to the positive result, and for a moment his expression was completely unreadable. Then he crossed the distance between us in 2 strides, pulling me into his arms so tightly I could barely breathe. "A baby." His voice was rough with emotion. "We're having a baby. I know we didn't plan. I mean, it's so soon. I don't care." He pulled back to look at me, and there were tears in his eyes, actual tears. "Stella, I don't care about timing or plans. We're having a baby. A family. Something I thought I'd lost the right to after Angela." His voice broke. "You've given me everything. A reason to be better. A home instead of just a house. And now this, a child. Our child." I started crying too, overwhelmed by the emotion in his voice, by the fierce joy on his face. "You're happy?" "Happy doesn't begin to cover it." He sank to his knees, pressing kisses to my still flat stomach. "Hello, little one. I'm your papa, and I promise you, I swear to you, I will protect you and your mama with everything I have. You'll grow up safe, loved, cherished. You'll have everything I didn't, everything Angela's children should have had." Watching him, this dangerous man brought to his knees by the promise of new life, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about us anymore. This was about creating something pure and good from the darkness we'd both known. "We'll need to make changes," I said softly, running my fingers through his hair. "Security, lifestyle, whatever you need." He stood, cradling my face. "I'll make the restaurants completely legitimate. Sell off the other interests. Focus on building something our child can be proud of. You don't have to give up everything." "I want to." His thumbs traced my cheekbones. "I want our child to grow up with a father who comes home at night, who doesn't have blood on his hands, who chose love over power." He kissed me gently. "You've made me want to be better, Stella. This," his hand covered mine on my stomach, "makes me want to be the best version of myself." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Dominic became impossibly more protective, hiring a private doctor, installing enough security to guard a small country, hovering over me like I might break. It should have been suffocating. Instead, it felt like being wrapped in the safest cocoon imaginable. He talked to my growing belly every night, telling stories in Italian about his grandmother, about Sicily, about the life he wanted to build for our family. Started sketching plans for converting one of the bedrooms into a nursery. Attended every doctor's appointment, holding my hand through morning sickness and mood swings with endless patience. The families sent gifts and congratulations, the baby solidifying our position in their world. But Dominic was already pulling away from that life, systematically legitimizing his businesses, cutting ties with the darker elements, building something clean for our child to inherit. I kept working until the 7th month, when Chef Laurent gently suggested I might want to rest. Dominic had already set up a test kitchen in the penthouse where I could experiment with recipes, planning for the restaurant I'd open after the baby was born, a dream he insisted on making reality. Our daughter was born on a warm September evening, arriving 3 weeks early with a fury that made the nurses laugh. Dominic was there through all of it, never leaving my side, holding my hand through the pain, tears streaming down his face when they placed our daughter in his arms. "Angela," he whispered, looking down at the tiny, perfect face. "We'll call her Angela, if that's okay with you." I nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. He'd told me about his sister during one of our late-night talks, about how much he wished she could have met me, could have seen him happy. Naming our daughter after her felt right. "Angela Rosa Russo," I said softly, "after both the women who made you who you are." His smile was incandescent. "Perfect. She's perfect. You're perfect." He bent to kiss me, careful not to jostle our daughter. "Thank you for everything, for choosing me, for giving me this family, for making me believe in happy endings." Looking at him holding our daughter, at the pure love on his face, at the life we'd built from fear and darkness and impossible circumstances, I felt my own smile bloom. I'd walked into Sorrentino's kitchen 3 months after fleeing my ex, scared and alone and desperate for invisibility. I'd found the opposite, a man who saw me, who protected me, who loved me with an intensity that should have terrified me but instead made me feel invincible. "No," I said, touching his face with my free hand. "Thank you. For finding me. For refusing to let me stay hidden. For giving me everything I didn't know I needed. Always," he promised. "Our daughter sleeping peacefully between us. For the rest of our lives, Tesoro, you're stuck with me now." "Good," I whispered. "Because I'm not going anywhere, and I meant it." The girl who'd run from danger had stopped running. She'd found her home in the arms of the most dangerous man in the city. Found safety in his protection, love in his possession, peace in his fierce devotion. The Mafia boss and the dishwasher, the monster and his light, the protector and the protected. We were unlikely. We were impossible. We were perfect. And as I watched the sun set over our city through the hospital window, our daughter sleeping peacefully in her father's arms, I knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly where I was meant to be. Home, safe, loved, forever.